All right. Hello, KYGO Digital land out there. We are joining live today for an awesome, incredible show highlighting some amazing special education educators from across the state who are going to be sharing some awesome stuff with us today. I've also got some of the KYGO Digital team here with us today. We have Elaine Abanatha and Kathleen Receiver, who are digital innovation leaders for JCPS. We have Courtney DeRossett joining us from KDE, field staff there. And I'm Allison Langley, and I am so thrilled again to be hosting this show today to share with you guys some incredible work being done that we hope that you will take back and share with your schools. So we also have, let me preface this with, we also have Brandy New joining us as a guest today to share some things going on with her. She's the instructional technology coordinator for Hardin County Schools and also a curriculum specialist with Shattered Glass. Those of you all that are following and know a lot about Shattered Glass are familiar with Brandy, so we're thrilled to have her here. Let me introduce our amazing educators today. We have Ed Voiles, who's a special education teacher at Louisville Day Treatment. We have Alan Ferguson, who is an exceptional child educator out at the Peace Academy in JCPS. We have Dan Pike, special ed teacher at Brooke DuPont. And also we have Nick Newton from Rineyville School joining us straight from his low incidence classroom. Nick is also one of the founders of HCS SpedTech, so I'm thrilled to get him on the show finally. And they are going to be sharing with us today lots of great information, things that you can take back right away and implement in your classrooms. So without further ado, we want to go ahead and get this show started and get these guys and gals sharing with us. So take it away, guys.
That was our cue.
That's your cue.
Well, all right. I'll jump right in.
Alan, you get to share first.
So I got thrown into this pool last October when a district resource came into my email box from my principal with a note about, do you think you could do this in your classroom? Of course, my response was, sure. So we did Hour of Code through code.org. And the key part is that the kids really engaged with it and really enjoyed it. That's the biggest selling point. And then there are things that we get from it unintentionally that they have no idea that they're doing, which is great. I have a list of things to talk about for code.org for anybody that's listening. So here at Peace, this is supposed to be an acute facility, which means in theory, the kids are not here very long. And every day my classroom changes. Using code.org, I can do a variety of things, but some of the good things are that the kids can work independently. So if I get a kid on Monday, they can start on the coding program. I get a different kid on Tuesday, Monday's kid takes the next step and Tuesday's kid starts right at the beginning. So it helps from a student management, classroom management point of view. We're not always reinventing the wheel. Then that allows me to do some peer teaching opportunities. So Monday's kid gets to sit beside Tuesday's kid and show Tuesday's kid the ropes of the first lesson. The other thing is that code.org is extremely visual. So there's not a lot of reading. There's not I don't have to get over that hump. There's not a lot of instructions. It's look at it, figure it out, and do it, which allows me to get over a lot of ECE humps with kids that have reading issues, not on grade level. But even at that, I can adjust the work level on code.org so that if I have a kid that's that gets it, I can increase the difficulty. Or a kid that needs a different level of support, I can take it down a couple of notches and their work becomes a little easier and even more visual. The thing that I like really about this, we're working with a lot of kids that their first response to everything that the educational process presents to them is no. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to read. I'm not going to do your math problem. It doesn't matter what it is. No is where they go. So if I were in an Algebra 1 classroom and I was teaching one-step problem solving, I would have trouble getting these kids to work through the steps in the problem solving process. And then when they want to check their work to see if their answer is correct, that's another hurdle to get over. They want to rush. They just want to get the answer right. Put them on code.org. They look at the problem. They map out a solution. They plug in their answer and they see if it works. If it works, they move on to the next level, the next step in the problem. If it doesn't work, they have to analyze their work and see where it went wrong. They have to kind of go step by step through it and see where the angry bird turned left when the angry bird was supposed to turn right. You can't get, we struggle to get kids to do that in math class. You put code.org in front of them and they jump in with both feet because it looks like a game to them. But they are going through the problem solving steps in ways that benefit them when we test them in other areas later in the year.
I just want to hop in really quick and just say, I love what you said about, so many of our students are just ingrained with this idea that they have to have a right answer right now. Like, is this the right answer? I love that this program gives them a way to seek out those answers. And, oh my gosh, this didn't work. Okay, let's try this. I think that's a skill that, unfortunately, high stakes testing has kind of stifled that a little bit. So giving students the opportunity to do this is wonderful. And then also, like you shared, you're differentiating that learning too, because they're all doing it, but at their own pace and at their own level. Well, you're incorporating students teaching other students. They're becoming leaders. It's great stuff. Can you share really quickly for those that are tuning in about code.org? Is that a free program? Is that a free service? How does that work?
It is, and it's easy to jump into. And going back to what you said about, so this allows them to be successful by failing, because they're going to put together a solution that doesn't work. If you did it in math class, or you asked them to go through their essay and check their spelling, you get all kinds of static about not doing it. But then if you do it this way, they willingly go back and check their work. The second part is, on a lot of these little coding problems that come up on code.org, there's more than one way to get the answer. There are often two ways and sometimes more. And you know what the kids really like? They really like to work out one that I didn't work out and show me. And then, then they're getting what they don't get often, which is positive feedback on their success. So that's, there's a lot to like here. So in October, there is an annual thing that this organization does called an Hour of Code. And this year's Hour of Code was called Dance Party. So the kids got to create a widget they got to create a thing that would dance. And actually they could create foreground dancers and background dancers. The dancers were endless. And there were songs that they could add to their dance. So they can make their character dance and they can provide the background music. And the music can go for several measures, which is a whole nother mathematical concept that's exciting that they know about, but they don't really understand until they code it. And the music can change and the dance can change. And then they get a little certificate that I can print out and they can take back. And it's just a little thing, but they love it. They like showing people that certificate. And for the kids that are here for a little longer, then I can move them into the essentially the middle school coding curriculum. And they can start, they code in there's Angry Birds. There are other animated characters that they're familiar with from popular media. And if they're here long enough, and I had one girl that completed the entire middle school curriculum, that was 48 lessons. And I don't often have kids that are here long enough to do that, but it happens occasionally for a variety of reasons. And then you get a certificate that says you completed a course. For a middle school kid rolling into high school who hadn't been successful in the educational business, that completion of a course is that's a big deal. And it's something that they're going to run into at the next level, because one of the things we know about the ninth grade is that we have transition issues when kids actually have to get a credit, for a semester or a credit for an entire year. They have to complete something and show that they have done it. So yes, code.org is a free resource. There are, my background besides special education is social studies. It's not like I'm a math or science genius. And the first time I went through this, I did a lot of going home at night to stay one problem ahead of the kids until I completed, all of the lessons. So it's not impossible. It works really well in the classroom, and it works. I'm not sure about, the three guys that are on here right now, we don't share a lot of students, but there are opportunities for kids to move from, say, my acute facility to a longer term place like Brooklawn or Maryhurst, and we can transition them in this class from place to place. So there's that element.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing all that. And I just love, anytime a free resource is available for teachers, that is like gold, in a time when budgets are constantly, in jeopardy, and you have this amazing program. All the research out there tells us how many coding jobs are going to be available for this generation of students, and you have a free program at your fingertips that you can work with students. So that is wonderful. Again, thank you for sharing all of that. I hope that people will be able to implement that in their classrooms quickly. I think we're going to shift over now. We have Nick Newton. Nick, are you good to go? I know Nick's a little bit on a time crunch. His students are at lunch, so
they are at lunch. So I will try to go quickly. I promise. My name's Nick Newton, Raineyville School. I'm a teacher for students with low incidence disabilities, so moderate to severe. And in our classroom, we code just like our gen ed friends do, but it always looks a little different because my kiddos need a different level of support. It takes a little bit more pre-planning on my part to set them up for success, as opposed to just saying, here's all the materials, have fun. For example, yesterday we were engineering shelters because we're reading My Side of the Mountain. So we were engineering shelters. I can't just, here's all the materials, make something. It has to be a little more directed. And our coding is like that too. One of the things I like to point out about coding is there's really two sides to that coin. There's your high-tech side with your Spheros that my amazing friend Brandy New is getting ready to talk about. The Spheros, my Codapillar, that it's block coding with a USB port. Kids love it. Allison's kids have it, I know. Aubie on my Osmo. There's a lot of different high-tech forms of coding, but I don't think we need to shy away from the analog side of coding as well and the low-tech side. My paper's underneath here. This is not the best example for anybody to see necessarily, but we were reading Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters, and so we utilized the content to teach coding at the same time. So we did it paper and pencil based, even that they had to take Nyasha and get to the palace, and they had to code around the conditions like the snakes and the river and the jungle. And we talk about loops that instead of writing Nyasha needs to go up, 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 we can just make it a loop. So I'm exposing them to those vocabulary words that are critical and they can use down the road in the elementary level. I teach K through 5, and I have kindergarten first graders this year who are doing coding, even if it's paper pencil. the reason I really got into the value of coding at all in my classroom is I sat with a school psychologist several years ago, and one of the subtests that a student is given in order to qualify for my classroom is this. They have to code a dog to get to the bone. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I said it. In the shortest number of steps, and you have conditions that you can't go in the mud puddle. So kids are qualifying to come into my special class based on their ability to code. And so I'm not doing my due diligence if I'm not teaching them not necessarily how to solve the test, but those skills that are incorporated in the executive functioning, problem solving, cause and effect, direction words, following directions. There's a whole lot of ancillary skills that are embedded when we're doing coding activities and things practicing that. And that's really all I have to add. I'm going to let Brandy jump in here. I'm elementary. Brandy, our district technology coordinator for Hardin County Schools. I don't know if that's your job title or not, but I'll give you a new one. Life can deal with it. But what she did, she worked with some high schoolers as well. So we want to show some of that progression and that continuum of how those skills can jump over there. Do you need to come here? And as she's coming over, I guess the last point I want to make is how we can connect all of the coding to our standards and to what we're doing academically as well. It doesn't have to be a cold, isolated science practice. It can be incorporated and integrated. So here's the amazing Brandy New. Yay!
He's a mess. Okay, I don't even know how to follow that, and he's calling me amazing because he just nailed it. So that was awesome. No, so actually through Nick and some of our special education consultants, because I do technology integration in the whole county, sometimes people think that they're not allowed to contact me or that their kids aren't my population. But through Nick and in the consultant, I started working with the LI classroom at our high school, one of our biggest high schools, Central Hardin. And we went in and kind of did some scratch stuff first. And immediately upon walking into the room, I had a little guy who I let them play a video game already on Scratch and then break it. We hack it on purpose first. Like we look at the code and kind of start to read it. And so all the gamers in the room were immediately like my new best friend. And connected with the little guy who got my email address and is like sending me his code in Scratch now. And that is block-based, so we're doing drag and drop, but they were making the video game, and we're having success with it. The tutorials in Scratch are pretty easy to follow. Like as well as having words, they have arrows that point where you need to go. So that visual support was really good for them, because even in high school, the kiddos that I was working with are still reading math, basic functioning is at an elementary school level. So having that success was pretty awesome for them for once. Or feeling that. I'm not saying for once, like that was the only time they ever did it, but I think they don't often. And you mentioned it a minute ago, he did when you talking about code.org, that success and that feeling of I did it. I made this, do this thing. So we followed that up with some coding and engineering challenges with Sphero, which is my fave. And they did some block-based coding there and got to work together. And I think the really important part for me was after leaving the Sphero with them, I got an email from the teacher last week, and the little guy that I had connected with initially, when I took the Sphero in, I was like, look, I ain't got time to explain all this to Miss Young. It would take her forever. And I was like, come here, I'm just going to show you real quick. And he's like, I got this, and in 5 minutes, I had showed him how to set it all up. He got to teach the rest of the class that week and show them this is how we do it. So he is like, one of the paras in the room didn't realize I could hear her, and she said, who is this lady and why is she his best friend? I've never seen his head off his desk. And when I come in now, he's like, yeah, let's do this, So she sent me an email after they had finished with the Sphero last week and said that he was considering dropping out because he's of age and had just kind of decided that in 10 years he was still working on the same skills and this wasn't his jam. Like he was tired of being a failure and he was not planning on coming back to school next year. But through what we were able to offer him and through my relationship now with Miss Young and going in there, and we're planning on teaching some more of her content with coding and robots next year. He told her that he will come back as long as I keep coming back. So, to me, that was like huge, right? That was look, I'm going to cry. I cried like when she sent it. Like, that's the reason I do what I do. It's a different aptitude. It's a different set of skills. And he got it. And so I feel like, that's what it's all about. We got to change this, the path for this little guy. So you better believe I'm going to be in there next year with some robots and some coding so that he can continue to feel successful. So that's why I wanted to share. I jumped in on Nick's part. Sorry.
I want to say something, because awesome to the teacher that let you come in there and wanted to partner with you, because when you come into a class and you give that support to that teacher, guess what? Now they know to hone into those skills for those kids. So perfect partnership, and we think you made me cry too, Brandon.
Yes, and this is why I'm so happy that Nick was able to come on the show, and Brandy too, just to share. Oftentimes certain populations are thought that they can't do this. Yes, they can, and even sometimes teachers are hesitant to bring this to their classroom because they don't understand coding, but they don't realize. And I'm going to quote Nick here, and I hope I don't mess up his quote, but I remember him saying, "We code every day." When we walk to our building at school, we tell ourselves, I need to get into the building. What do I need to do? I need to open the door. That's a code. Like, you're coding. When you drive home from work, this is the route I need to take. That means I need to turn right on this street and left on that street. That is coding. We're coding all the time. So bringing this to the classroom and showing these kids how to do this, and hey, you're essentially coding every day. And again, just any population can do this, any population. So I just think that that's so powerful, the work that, we've got going on in high school level, middle school level, low incidence level. Like, kids can code. We just need to be diligent in getting it into their hands.
Can I ask a question? It's Alan.
Yes.
Brandy, how do you spell Sphero?
Oh, Sphero. It's
Sphero.
SPHERO.
Okay.
They have different sizes and whatnot. They run on a tablet. They go from $50 to about $150.
Okay.
And they're waterproof.
And you can Oh yeah, you can't break them. And you can do drawing coding, you can do block-based coding, or you can even do text coding with them. They're my most versatile favorite because it's, low floor, high ceiling. Like, anybody can use it, but you can take it everywhere.
All right.
I may or may not be a educational liaison with Sphero, so big plug for that one.
Here's my Sphero for the classroom. He's a special character you may know.
Yeah.
But on this one, the app will even let you do it by face. So doing emotions, if you smile, he'll do one thing. If you frown, he'll do another thing. So the apps have a lot of different things that can be used for different kinds of skills. Sorry.
I can see some places here we can use that, because we have some low incidence classrooms where that would have a big impact.
Yeah. And I just want to do a little plug here for Brandy. She is a nationally recognized Sphero hero. So if you guys want some more resources or some ways that you can incorporate Sphero in your classroom, look her up. Find her on the Twitterverse. She's out there. She will help you. She's awesome.
Well, and this is an interesting. This tags on to what Nick and Brandy have said. So for a long time, English is a code. Algebra is a code. We identify kids as special ed when they have difficulty with that code. But this is something they can see and do. And a lot of our low incidence kids and some of the other ones can see and do things and be successful. And that, that it opens up a lot of doors.
Absolutely. All right. So we want to keep this this coding train rolling here. We're going to take it on over. Ed, are you ready to come in? We got Ed Boyles from Louisville Day Treatment is going to come in now on the show. Thank you, Nick and Brandy. I don't know if you guys have to jet out. I know you are on a time crunch for lunch. So thank you, Nick and Brandy. Please feel free to stay on, but I know you all had kiddos coming back.
Well, my setup is similar to Alan's with the transitioning students. We have a lot of, around every 12 weeks, we get new students or a student will go out. So having to have a program that can be used at any time and adapt to the students really good. What I use, it's not free. It's free up until a certain point, I should say, is called Code Combat, similar to code.org, but it's a game. It teaches them how to code with their character, and they progress through a game playing as their character, but the only way they can control their character is with code. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. Oh, maybe not. So, and what they can do, what I've had them do is the JavaScript 1 and 2. I've had 2 classes, and they progress through that. And like I said before, it goes up to a certain point, and then it doesn't become free anymore. But it's a good introduction to coding. And then afterwards, sorry, I've showed you to the whole thing there, trying to get rid of it. Oh, Lord.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How do you code that, Ed?
There we go. I got it. So, and then after that, I introduced what's called GMU robots. Those you do have to pay for as well. They look like this after the product is done, and it is a robot. The students build it going based on instructions on an iPad, and it tells them exactly how to build it. They follow these directions, and then afterwards, it gives them the option to control it with the iPad, or they can code it. They can code it to go through an obstacle course or code it to pick things up. And what I did in my class was it's a block coding, so drag and drop. And what I had my students would do was actually code it to go through an obstacle course that I had laid out and throughout the classroom. So they coded it to pick things up, take them to cross the room, drop them off, pick something else up, and zigzag through some obstacles. And then finally, my last thing that I use for coding is called Robo Link code drones. I don't know if y'all have heard of those before. Those are also something you have to buy. I've been fortunate enough to have been able to get my hands on those with the great staff that we have here. And those is they build the controller, they wire the controller, and then they link the controller to the drone itself, and then can code the controller to control the drone. They can control every movement. They can actually even control the drone itself just by coding the drone controller, causing when you turn on the controller, the drone will take off and fly around and do whatever it tells them to do. And that uses C+ type coding. What I've noticed, like Alan was saying in his class, these students that usually struggle in regular classes, when we present them with code or something they find fun or they think is a game, they've been doing really well in those classes, especially with the coding. Students that I've had as an ECE teacher, I co-teach a lot. I see them in the other classes, the English classes, the math classes, the classes that like aren't fun, struggling. But when they get here and they start playing with code or playing what they think is a game, and they're actually learning something, they do so much better. My sleepers turn into thriving students. So it's really a miracle to see, honestly. That's really all I have to share about what I've been doing in my class and how my students do. If you have any questions.
Yeah, Ed, I got a question.
Yep.
Do you fly the drones in the gym?
We do. We do fly the drones in the gym, and we fly them in my room. With my school, we're actually in what used to be a youth prison. So my room is the day area of the student cells. So all around my room right now is a bunch of empty cells, and there's plenty of room where you can fly 2 or 3 drones in the room. So, but we do fly them through the gym, through an obstacle course. I do have some pictures that I had them do. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. So share my screen here real quick.
I think I got it for you, Ed.
Okay.
Are these pictures the ones you put on the slideshow?
Yes, the 3.
Awesome. Yeah, they're up here. They're good. Yes.
There we go. Yes, those three. That was just from this year. Last year, I had them in the gym when my room wasn't as set up. But this year, we've flown them through my room, through obstacle courses, and then they coded them to fly through the obstacle courses, which was they thought was really neat. I thought it was really neat, and they just loved it. Like I said, the students that didn't do well in the rest of the classes, when they were like, "Oh, I get to fly a drone. I can tell it what to do without touching a controller." That's neat. So,
or for a lot of our kids, without being told what to do by an adult or staff member.
yeah,
They can do some of this independently. It's theirs.
yeah.
I think the gamification piece too, like this generation is very much the competitive, and they're used to having the games. And so all of those programs that you're using that have that component and the building, so many students that might struggle with one set of skills really flourish in another. So putting something in their hands, letting them create, build, you can see a lot of growth with that as well. Without further ado, we're going to send it on over to Mr. Pike. Thank you again, Ed, for sharing the awesome stuff happening in your classroom. I feel like I need to take a field trip day and head up to JCPS and see all of this awesome stuff. But we're going to turn it over to Dan Pike. He is going to take it from here and share the stuff happening in his school.
Yeah, thank you. So I, like Alan and Ed, I'm in a classroom that also turns over quite a bit. We have typically kindergarten, first, second, occasionally third graders in my classroom. So about every 2 weeks or so, I'm getting a new round of students, some of whom have been exposed to coding and a lot of whom have not. So coding is something I got into also kind of prompted by the Hour of Code activity last October. And so I just kind of started going through some of the different options there. And one that has worked well for my students is codable.com, and that's KODABLE.com. And I believe I added a link in the resources there. So it is also free up to a point. And most of it for my students, they've been able to work within the free section without any issues there. Occasionally they'll get to the end and then we have other activities for them. But as far as, just teaching them some of the basics with sequencing and functions and getting into some simple loops, some of my early elementary students have been able to, use that and make a lot of progress. So I started off the Hour of Code with them, kind of explaining why it's important for them to do that. And wanted them to know that this is going to be like reading and math for you guys. Eventually, you're probably going to have a job one day where, it doesn't even exist right now. And that even if you're not going to become a computer programmer, this is going to give you career flexibility down the road. And, you get some blank stares from some first and second graders, when you're explaining that to them. But once they get into it and they start working through some of the mazes and understanding that code, you have to be very specific a lot of times too. It's really helped my students with communication and their writing. They can write something sometimes and it will make sense to them, but when someone else reads it out loud, they realize that they might have, had a syntax error or they forgot a word. And so when they're doing code and they've got to create a line of code for their fuzzy uncodable to get through the maze, they get that very specific feedback right then about where their line of code might have gone wrong or maybe another way that they could write it. So in that way, it's helped my students build some resiliency and, it just helps sharpen their problem solving skills altogether. We've also used a robot called Botley. I believe it's the learning resources, and I linked that as well. Very similar. It's been better for some of the younger elementary students, and it has a remote control that goes along with it. You program the direction and how many times the robot or Botley is going to go in a particular direction. And so we set up obstacle courses in the classroom and in the gym to get him to where he needs to be. So that's been something that's a little more hands-on than being on the computer with Codable that they've really enjoyed. And so that's kind of led us into some other areas. We have some other robots that we've ordered for our class and then for the middle school as well. We've Ozobots is what they're called, but we've not gotten into them yet. So the hour of code is really kind of the catalyst for it all. And, the students have really taken to it. And for kiddos especially that are very literal in the way that they think, and a lot of times that's our kids, they don't see outside of the box. Coding's been great for them. So that's really how we've been implementing it in our room.
I love the part where you talked about, explaining to kids the jobs that they will be working in someday aren't even created yet. Like, that's so important to start. We call these now soft skills, these types of skills. So I think that's so important in all grade levels, but especially the earlier we start them, we catch them, and then that interest in STEM peaks, and we don't lose them, and we keep them in those jobs that, again, are going to be the ones that they're going to be filling in future. Yeah,
and I could try to pose it to my kids that they're the boss of the computer. They're the boss of the robot at that time, and they've got to be very specific about what they're going to tell them. So they kind of like having that role too of being in charge and being the boss. And if you're not direct with, what you're asking, then it's not going to work. And so you've got to, find another way to say it or find another code to write.
All right. Great job. Thank you, Dan, again for sharing. And thank you to the entire crew of guests today that shared out. We hope that you all found something that you can take back to your classroom to create, connect, and share. And when you do, make sure that you post that to Twitter with the KYGoDigital hashtag so that we all can learn and see what you guys are doing back in your classrooms. Also, remember, if you are watching for the first time and you're not subscribed to our channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Make sure that you're subscribing to our channel. And also, most exciting thing, we are at over 800 registered folks across the state of Kentucky, awesome educators that are wanting to create, connect, and share this summer on our summer tour. We have 6 event locations this year. We've added a Louisville area event, so make sure that you are getting registered to come attend those events. It's going to be an awesome, awesome summer of learning, creating, connecting, and sharing. Elaine, do you want to let everyone know how they can keep up with KYGO Digital?
Absolutely. And I want to take the moment to thank all of the teachers that are on our panel for all that they do, as well for our students and our children in our communities. But I want to also take a second. I have gotten so many quotes and so many tools from this show, and I want to thank you guys again. So we also have a Facebook page. So if you're on Facebook, you can join us on Kentucky Go Digital. Make sure, as Allison said, you can go to Kentucky Go Digital on the hashtag, and you can see a lot of interesting topics and conversations that are going on, as well as this channel, which is kygodigital.com. And don't forget to create, connect, and share those ideas to the hashtag and on Facebook. And so others around you can connect with you as well. Until next time, we'll see you again.